We are tonight happy to welcome Dick Tatarczuk
You got it.
and Kate Peterson of Watertown Savings Bank. They are here to present the basics of financial literacy and show you how to create and stick to a budget. Dick is the former and Kate is the current CFO at the Watertown Savings Bank. Sophia Suarez-Friedman and Maysa Ramos are Watertown Social Service Resource Specialists here in town, and they will talk about resources and services that are available to Watertown residents to help reduce costs, meet emergency financial needs, and locate assistance specific to the pandemic. If you have any questions during the program, please type them into the chat box or raise your hand, depending on which one you know how to do easiest. And one of our panelists will grab your question and get an answer for you. Thank you all for coming, and I'd like to turn tonight's presentation over to Dick.
All right, thank you very much, Jill. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody who was on board. Very nice to chat with you. I hope we can give you a little bit of help here and some information that might be useful to you. As Jill said, I'm the recently retired CFO at Watertown Savings Bank. I had been there for close to 20 years, and Kate Peterson, very happy to have her on board to take my place. So I said, hopefully we can help you out a little bit tonight. And with that, I'll jump right in. So I just want to go through the agenda here. If I can get this to work. So we're going to talk a little bit about bank accounts and interest. We're going to talk about budgeting. We'll spend some time on that. I know that's one of the main focuses we have. We're going to talk a little bit about financial goals, and that really kind of works its way through all that we're going to talk about tonight, because really all of this is about managing money and using your resources wisely and having goals set up. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about credit and credit cards. And I think we're going to touch on bankruptcy just very briefly, and anything else that comes to mind. So as Jill said, if you do have questions along the way, please let us know. We'll try to answer them as we go. That way they'll be fresh in your mind. So with that said, let's talk about bank accounts a little bit. And, you might provide some feedback too if you find that this stuff isn't really quite what you were looking for, or maybe it isn't pertinent, or maybe I'm just too basic. So a little bit of feedback might help there too. We can kind of tailor it according to what your needs are. But we're going to talk about two types of bank accounts here. We're going to talk about checking accounts that generally pay no or low interest. And we'll talk about savings accounts that do pay a little bit more interest. We'll get into the concept of interest in just a little bit, if that's something that you're not very familiar with. So let's go to checking accounts. Okay, so a checking account is a safe place to keep your money. It's federally insured. Some people, have concern about putting money into banks. It's federally insured, so up to $250,000, you can't lose anything, even if the bank were to fail, and that's not a very likely occurrence. Also, too, money in a checking account is very easily to get at. So that's the nice thing about it. It's really a transaction account. A lot of people use that for direct deposit. So whether you're getting a paycheck, you have that directly deposited, perhaps a Social Security check or some type of support. A lot of that can be done direct deposit. So you don't have to worry about running down to the bank to deposit it. It goes right into your account, and it's easily accessible. You can write a check. That seems to be kind of a diminishing art these days. People don't write as many checks as they used to. You can use a debit card, which is a great way to do it. It's just a plastic card. You can go to the supermarket, wherever, and just kind of use it like a credit card, but the money comes right out of your account. You can also withdraw money at an ATM if you tend to like to carry cash around. So it's very easy to get at and use. The beauty of it is you get a monthly statement with that. So it gives you a list of all your activity. So you know what's happened and you can track everything. And as I said, you don't make very much interest on a checking account. That's not a place where you want to put your money, if you happen to be looking to earn anything on it. This is a copy of a typical bank statement. So again, this is what I was saying. So this is this person's statement has all of their activity on it. I'm just going to point out a couple of things here that might be useful. So the first item that we're looking at is a credit to the account for $694.81. That happens to be the person's paycheck. So again, the money goes right into the account. Looks like they get paid every 2 weeks. The money goes in, so you get a recording of that. And if whether they're using their debit card at the supermarket or what have you, all of that gets recorded. So you get a nice statement at the end of the month. Makes it much easier to keep track of your money. Second item we're looking at here is an ATM withdrawal, and that just underscores what I said. You can see what you took money out, $21.25. Maybe that incurred some kind of a fee, and I'm not sure. People don't, it's usually round numbers coming out of an ATM. And down at the bottom, this is, and you're going to hear about this several times, but this is one of my pet peeves. People who pay fees kind of unnecessarily. You can see one of them says fees for an overdraft. So that person was charged $5 for overdrawing their account. And you can kind of see what happened there. Right above it, there's a mortgage payment. There's an automatic payment came out. $710 came out. There wasn't enough money in the account, so there was an overdraft. So that's kind of a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is managing your money, keeping track of things, budgeting, and so forth, so that you know where you are and you don't run into a situation where you end up costing yourself some money because you overdrew your account. This is a copy of a typical check, and I'm just going to go over this really quick. I'm sure everybody's probably familiar with checks and how to write them out. At the very bottom, those numbers way on the left that get highlighted, that's the bank's routing and transit number. And that's just a number. So all the checks that run around the nation, you can deposit a check in California, goes across the country, goes through the Federal Reserve Bank, comes back to the bank where you have it drawn on. So that's how the Federal Reserve knows who to charge for, is your bank. That next number, you can see, match that up with the number in the top right corner. That's the check number. And that next number is your account number. So now in the month, when it comes back to your bank and they need to charge an account, they know whose account to charge. That would be yours. So you can send a check across the country, goes into somebody's account there. They send it to their bank sends it to the Federal Reserve. Now it comes to your bank and they charge your account. All transparent, all the bank's balance, money goes into somebody's and comes out of your account, which is what you originally intended. Any questions at this point? Okay, we'll continue. This is a check register, and this is something you would keep. This is probably a paper format here. Back in the old days, people kept this all by hand. I remember my mom having a thing about an inch thick. She kept track of every check she wrote. So that's your way of keeping track of it. Today, there are much more automated ways to do it. You could use Quicken. You could probably do something on your phone. Any number of ways to accomplish this. As a matter of fact, not a plug for Watertown Savings Bank, but if you have online banking with us, you can go right into your account and you can keep track of all this stuff right in your account. So you keep track of it and you know where everything is. So finally, just recapping, a checking account, safe place to put your money, federally insured, easily accessible, monthly statement, and you don't earn much interest. So let's go on to the concept of interest. And I'll go do this kind of quick, but there's some things here that I want you to understand. If anybody has a question or it isn't quite clear, just let us know and I'll kind of circle back. But really, interest is the cost of using someone else's money. And that's really what it is. You're paying somebody for the use of their money. So if you can kind of think about it, in terms of Watertown Savings Bank, a lot of people go there and deposit their money in the bank. If they deposit their money in a checking account, as I said, you probably don't earn much interest, if any at all. If you have a savings account, you might get a little bit more. But the bank pays customers for the use of their money. And then the bank turns around and lends that money out and the bank earns interest on it. So that's kind of how that all works. So the bank pays you interest to keep your money in the bank. If you happen to be a borrower of money, you're going to pay interest on that money to the bank. And that typically happens with a home mortgage. Somebody takes out a mortgage to buy their home. It certainly would be a car loan, anything like that. There's an interest charge that goes along with that. So interest is determined by a rate. So I'll just use a very simple rate of 2%, which is probably way more than you'll get on your deposit account at the time, but this check might be a little bit stale. If you could get 2% on your deposit these days, you're doing very well. But what that means is for every $100 you have in the bank, you're going to receive $2 in income. So at the end of the period, you get $2, you'd have $102. If you happen to be paying on a loan, like I said, a mortgage loan, maybe your rate might be 4%. So in that instance, for every $100 you owe the bank, you would actually pay an annual additional amount of $4. So there you have it right there. It's banking 101. The bank makes a loan, makes $4, pays $2 for the use of the money, and has $2 left over. And you can understand that a bank has tellers, buildings, ATMs, lots of infrastructure. So that other $2 is for the bank, hopefully to pay all their bills and have a little bit left over. So that's kind of like a real basic look at interest. So let's go on to a savings account. Again, safe place to put your money, federally insured, the same as if you had a checking account, $250,000. Just might add, if you had $250,000 in each account, they wouldn't both be insured. The federal FDIC insures up to $250,000 for each customer. Your money is, again, easily accessible, but not quite as easily as a checking account. You can't write a check on a savings account. You can't go to an ATM, and you can probably use a debit card in some cases. You do get paid interest on your money. Again, these days it's not a lot, but you will get paid some interest on your deposit account. So you'd at least make something on that as compared to getting little or nothing on a checking account. Finally, leaving your money in the account for longer periods of time allows interest to compound. And this is I just want you to get this concept of compounding interest. And very simply, in most cases, I know, most community banks like Watertown Savings Bank, you get paid interest every month. So whatever you have in your account, say, let's go back to the example where if you had $100 in the account and say you were in $2 in interest in the first month, you'd now have $102 in the account, and that earns interest. So now next month you're getting paid interest on $102, and it continues to grow. And that's really something to keep in the back of your mind in terms of being able to generate a little bit of wealth, or at least having your money work harder for you and earn you a little bit extra. So very simple. It's earning interest on interest. You earn interest each month. Your interest gets added to the account. And the longer you leave it in, the more it's going to earn. So, again, that's a very basic way of looking at it, but that's what it's all about. I happened to run across this quote, Albert Einstein. I'm sure you know who he is, kind of came across the theory of relativity, really smart guy. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. I think that might be a little bit of an overstatement, but very, very poignant items here. He who understands it earns it. And that means if you really understand it, you'll try and do everything you can to earn a little bit of it. He who doesn't understand it pays it. And that would just be someone who probably is borrowing money, maybe when they could find a better way to do it. And we'll talk about that in budgeting a little bit. But I just thought that was kind of a neat quote. So just a couple of real quick examples on compounding. Let's just take an example. The first bullet here is, say you deposit $50 a week into a checking account for 20 years. You don't earn any interest. At the end of 20 years, you have $52,000 in your checking account. So now it's the next example would be a deposit account where you put that same $50 in savings account and it pays you 2% interest continually. So interest gets credited every month. So at the end of 20 years, you would have accumulated $64,820. So that's, compared to the 52,000, you have a lot more money in your account, and a good chunk of that is compounding of interest. One further, just to take that one step further, make the same assumptions as above and make it $100 a week that you put away. In the checking account, you'd have had $104,000, and in the savings account, you'd have almost $130,000. So that's just kind of an illustration of the effect of compounding of interest. Any questions on that to this point? Okay, so where do I find a bank account? Look for a free checking account. They're fairly easy to find if you have direct deposit. If you don't have money to, that you need right away, you can shop around for a savings account. Most people probably would like to put it into a checking type of account or a transaction account to start with so that they have easy access to their money. If you don't need it right away, you can look for some type of a savings account, and you may get a little bit more interest on it. Avoid paying fees. And again, you're going to hear this several times through all of this. If you want to use online banking, ATMs, buying checks, look for banks that don't charge or charge a minimal amount. And again, a lot of banks will give you free accounts if you have direct deposit. Sometimes you may have to do so many debit card transactions during the month, but they are out there. So look around for those if they're available. And again, FDIC insurance covers every depositor. And there's also insurance in Massachusetts, Depositors Insurance Fund, that actually insures everything over and above the FDIC limit. So in effect, if you have a bank that participates in the Deposit Insurance Fund, which Watertown Savings Bank does, every penny is insured. So just something to be aware of. Service charges are really an additional cost to you. It just increases the cost of the things that you do. So again, getting back to that overdraft fee, that type of thing, just be cognizant of where you are with your money and manage it properly. And you don't really have to deal with service charges all that much. But they can be expensive. Overdraft fees can be $30. Loan late fees can vary. Stop payments on a check can be $30. So they add up. So again, just something you want to be cognizant of. Don't pay unnecessarily. So now we're going to move into budgeting here. We're going to bring Kate on board. Just before I do that, just a quick comment that whoever you are, whatever your resources are, budgeting is really something that, in my estimation, is extremely important. You just need to really manage your money, make sure you know where you are, and live within your means, basically. So with that, we'll turn it over to Kate, and we can just move right along from there. So just let me know when you want to move, Kate.
Well, I think you just covered most of what's on this slide. So if you want to go to the next slide, we can start there.
Okay.
So where do you start with a budget? Just everyone can have one, and companies have one as well. So it's really an annual plan that can be as simple or complex as you want it to be, and will help you. I think I click a couple of the buttons, Dick, for it to. It's going to help simplify your life, avoid any stress, and also help reach some of your financial goals. And as Dick just mentioned before, it'll help you live within your means. So next slide, please. Mm-hmm. The budget will have both short-term and long-term goals. So if starting a budget seems overwhelming to you, start with something small. Start with a short-term goal. And then also we'll have long-term goals that will take a little bit longer, whether it's saving for college or buying a house, some of the things that just take a bit longer to build up and reach your ultimate goal. So short-term goals, examples are paying your monthly rent on time consistently, buying a new mattress, setting aside money for holidays. Um, we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about credit cards. Those can be a budget buster. And then also you want to build an emergency fund to get through rough patches. For instance, no one could have predicted we would be in a pandemic for the last 15 months or so. And so that's something that, having an emergency fund for it is a good idea. Next slide, please, Dick. Some examples of long-term goals might be making it through the month, having added to your bank account, adding a little bit of savings, being able to handle unexpected expenses. We all know, medical bills happen, car repairs happen. You want to take a nice vacation, especially if you haven't been anywhere in the last 15 months. And so you want to also continue to grow your emergency fund as a long-term goal. Next slide, please. So the first step is really, what is your disposable income? And that's the money coming in, whether it's the primary resource for most individuals is going to be a paycheck after taxes. Hold on. I think we've got something coming in the chat here. I just want to make sure. Someone made a comment about keeping the money under your mattress because we just brought up mattress, and yes, that can know many people who do that, but it's safer in the bank, trust me.
You get no interest that way.
And no interest, right? Sorry, I just got sidetracked. That was a funny comment. So your paycheck, bank interest, if you're past retirement age or you have a special circumstance where you have Social Security money, alimony or child support, and other types of income that you can rely on consistently that's coming into your pocket. So you have to know what you have before you know what you can spend. So the next step, if we move to the next slide, is how much am I able to spend? And you should track your spending on a monthly basis. And the best way to do that now is through looking at if you're using your debit card all the time, because a lot of people don't use cash, is you can go right onto your bank account. For instance, Watertown has it. Lots of institutions have it. Even the ability to just go right into your bank account and download into a spreadsheet, or if you have some it's some other type of program you use to track. And so, for instance, whether you're gas, laundry, dry cleaning, groceries, auto repair, whatever it may be, track all of those expenses. So you know what you're spending. Next slide, please, Dick. And so Dick had already showed you this example of a check register. You can also be able to download these types of things directly from your bank account. And it will track both what's coming in and what's coming out. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm just reading another chat question here. The question if it's unlawful to not keep money in the bank. You can choose to keep. I don't think it's necessarily unlawful, but it's a safer place to have your money in the bank because it's insured, as Dick mentioned before, up to $250,000. And if you have a diff bank, then above and beyond that as well. So one of the major things you want to keep into account is if you're spending more than your disposable income. So if you're doing that, then you're in the red, if you will. And what you will have to do is then start to differentiate between what are your needs, obviously food, versus wants. I really want that new purse. I'm a big culprit of that one myself. And so your budget will help you track whether you are living beyond your means. And your budget will also help you track if you're keeping up with your financial goals. So if your goal is to buy a new car or go on vacation, your budget will help you achieve that goal. Next slide, please. Step 3 is adjusting your spending. Review what you're spending and make changes if it's not going to agree with what your end financial goal is. And remember your needs and wants. So for instance, bringing lunch from home versus going out to eat every day. That is a huge thing that you might take for granted. You might go out and grab the sandwich every day and not realize how much it adds up to at the end. brewing your own coffee. I am also a huge Dunkin' Donuts fan. And I can tell you during the pandemic, when I was sitting at home, I was saving $50 a week just by not going to Dunkin' Donuts for my 2 iced coffees every day. And then pay off your credit cards. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. To the extent that you can pay more than the monthly minimum payment, that is extremely beneficial to you. And if you have the ability to, then put them away. Next slide. Also determine what your fixed expenses are. And those are things that come in on a regular basis. That's rent, car payment, car insurance, medical insurance, daycare, various things that you know that you have to pay each month. Know those amounts so there's little opportunity to have any surprises. And then you have your variable expenses. So things like utilities, cable, car, whether it's gas or maintenance, food and entertainment, movies, restaurants, the world is opening up again. So those types of expenses will end back up in your budget. You don't need to know the exact amounts, but if you say, I'm going to put away discretionary funds, if you will, or for my variable expenses of account for maybe $200 a month, I'm just throwing a number out there, that you want to make sure you take that into account in your budget. Next slide, please. And we'll talk this is a little bit of a illustration here as to a budget. And Dick has a little note here that if you want a copy of this, you can email this account right here. And it's free if you just make a PayPal donation. So examples of your variable expenses we talked about already, travel, going out, utilities, car, various different things, babysitting, and then your fixed expenses, rent, mortgage, health insurance, cable. And so, this is a great example of how basic it can be, how basic just creating a budget like this could be to track all of the expenses that you have, as well as the income you have coming in as well in this example.
If I could just jump in, Kate, this is a spreadsheet that I found some years ago. I'm not sure if the note at the bottom of the spreadsheet is still valid. I probably found this 7 or 8 years ago. It was a very good spreadsheet. I still have a copy of it. If anybody wants, I could probably send you a copy of it.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not sure if that particular note or that Gmail address is still valid. But I guess I would say that there's probably plenty of them out there. If you just Google personal budget spreadsheet, you'll probably find about 10 of them. But like I said, this one I thought was particularly good. And if anybody wants a copy of it, just shoot me or Kate an email. We'll make sure that you get a copy of it.
Okay. And then I think one thing that's important here is up the top there, you saw that little circle just showed up. That's your money left over to budget. So, and then then the next time, no, go ahead to the next time. I want to talk about that. The next item is savings. So pay yourself first. So to the extent that you have excess funds or money left to budget, that's where you should be putting the money away, whether it's in a savings account, or your checking account. I mean, savings would probably be better because you can earn some interest, and that will help protect you for your emergency fund that we mentioned earlier. So the next slide, please, Dick. And then track your progress. Every month, record your disposable income and total expenses and make sure your outflows don't exceed your income. And if you have more money coming in or you have excess, you can put that away, and then you can start defining what your financial goals are. And we say simple, right? But, it can get complicated, and it's not always a perfect scenario, especially in the last year of what we've all been living through.
Yeah, and it's not always easy.
Nope, it definitely isn't. Next slide, please. So as we've, this is a little bit of a repeat of what we've been saying, but putting your money in some sort of interest-bearing deposit, it will help. Obviously interest rates aren't where we want them to be right now as consumers, but over time, that little bit of interest help, if you have money saved, that little bit of interest will help build up and help achieve your end goals. And as you work more and more with a budget, it'll help you gain control of your finances and provide you some rewards, whether it's you're saving for a car or a house, or even if it's just a vacation, or even if it's something really simple. You'll feel really good if you've started to stay on track and you can see the rewards at the end of the period. So tips for staying on budget. Think twice before making a purchase, especially major purchases. Use a 24-hour rule. Sometimes major purchases are very difficult, whether it's a car or, really anything, appliances. Shop around for the best deals. There's so many different websites and tools available for folks at this point that you can go and try to get deals, whether it's even just, there's Rakuten. I use that as an example. That's one I go to anytime I'm making an online purchase. It'll tell me if there's any discount codes, or it will tell me if I can get any cash back. And it's my husband laughs at me, but every once in a while I get these $20 checks in the mail for going and using those websites that help me save some money. Cut up your credit cards if possible. Don't use them if you don't have to. And if you're using a credit card to gain points, pay the balance off right away. And as Dick mentioned before, avoid unnecessary fees, whether it's overdraft or late payments. And again, forego your wants for now if you have financial goals, and try to focus on the needs, and then you can reward yourself later on for a job well done. So I think we just talked about that. And watch out for some, same as cash deals on some credit cards, because if you don't pay the balance timely, then the finance charges might start to creep up. And I think we talked about.
I think we've got that. Okay.
Yeah. All right, hold on. We got one question, I think, in the chat. Oh, so we already have a request to send the spreadsheet out, so we'll get that to you.
Okay.
All right, so moving on here in this, we'll talk a little bit about credit cards. Have you ever borrowed money? So whether it be you're borrowing money for the bank for a loan or through credit cards, what is credit, and how does credit use? So credit means you're taking some sort of loan out. It allows you to buy something now and promise to pay for that later. And most credit has an interest rate. You might see some sort of deals out there where you have no interest for a period of time, but eventually interest kicks in. Banks, as nice as we are, we don't always give away the money for free. The most common ones that everyone sees is credit cards, and generally they have a credit limit. However, interest rates can be very high. You'll see lots of introductory 0% interest rates, and then the credit card will go up to some outrageous APR. So use credit wisely, and because it can very easily get out of hand, especially now these days where no one really carries cash anymore. And there's so many different ways that you can just pull out a credit card, whether it's at Dunkin' Donuts or at the grocery store or the gas station, wherever it may be. You can come to the end of the week sometimes and say, oh my goodness, I had no idea I used this for this, that, and the other thing, because it's just so easy. Next slide, please. So a loan means that you're borrowing someone else's money for a period of time and then paying it back. And interest is the financial charge that you're paying to use that money and pay later. And the longer you take to repay, the more interest you have to pay. So what types of loans involve credit? So credit cards, again, is one of the most commonly used one, a car loan, and then obviously mortgages as well. The larger ticket price, shall we say, the larger the loan. In what types of things do you buy? We already covered some of this, whether it's clothing or food or electronics. You can use a credit card to pretty much pay for anything at this point. Next slide, please, Dick. So the benefits of using credit are that you don't have to carry cash. And like I said, not a lot of folks carry cash anymore. And it keeps your funds available for for emergencies, and you can receive goods now and services now and pay for them later, whether it's a haircut or all the way down to your meal at the local restaurant. And it makes it possible to pay for high cost items. Your washing machine goes, and you can use a credit card to go buy a new washing machine because it's something that you really feel like you can't live without.
All right, let me just jump in and, as far as responsibilities for using credit, and again, this is a serious matter because you really have to keep it under control. Items may very well end up costing you more than if you paid cash for it, because if there are finance charges, that adds to the cost of the item. So if you buy a TV for $300, you finance it and you pay for it over the next year, you may end up paying $325 for it, or $350. So, and if you don't use credit wisely, if you abuse it, that can affect your credit report and make it difficult to get credit in the future. Sometimes it's just a little bit too easy to buy things that you probably really can't afford, but it's impulse, whatever. And that's kind of what I meant about the 24-hour rule. Also, you need to apply. So you have to give out personal information, there's a credit check, that type of thing. So you can use your credit card to purchase all these items and a lot more. Instant gratification. You really have to make sure you're responsible. You may be better off using a debit card in a case where the money comes right out of your account. You don't have to pay anything for it. So again, just something to keep in mind. How much does it use to cost your credit card? And you pay the balance off right away. It doesn't cost you anything. You get your billing statement at the end of the month. If you make your payment by whatever date, that's it. There's no finance charge. And my wife and I do that. We're what I call point junkies. We put everything on a credit card, but we pay it off every month. So it's just that simple. So we get the points, but we never pay a finance charge. If I paid $2 a year in finance charge, I'd be upset about that. Credit card interest rates tend to run kind of high, as Kate had mentioned. 13% for excellent credit you could be up to 24%. And just put that in context. You had a 24% interest rate. You bought something for $100 on credit, paid for it a year later, it would actually cost you $124. So that's pretty expensive compared to the original cost. Other credit considerations. Credit score is very important. If you're really all aware of that, but if you use credit, there are agencies out there that track this information. And if you happen to apply for a credit card, if you happen to apply for a car loan, sometimes in cases of just trying to go someplace and get an apartment, they'll check your credit score. And that tells the story. If you have a poor credit score, that could either make it more expensive for you, you could be denied entirely. So you want to pay attention to that credit score. Make your payments on time. And the point here being that in a lot of cases, you have a due date for your payment, and the bank will say your payment's due on the 10th. And if you make it by the 20th, you still won't get a finance charge. Beyond that, you might get a finance charge. If you make your payment on time, the bank says you make your payment on time. If you make the payment 10 days late, the bank says they generally make their payment 10 days late. That will affect your credit score. You made a promise, keep it. And just with regard to credit reports, you're entitled to a free credit report every year. This website that I put in here, this is a government thing, so it's not a scam and it's not something you have to pay for. Federal government says you're entitled to a free credit report once a year. There are 3 credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. You could actually get one every 4 months, say, for example, from each of them. So you get 3 of them a year, and you can go along that way. And I believe you can even get them more frequently due to COVID. They changed the rules a little bit where you can even get it more frequently, but you probably don't need to do that. If you check it once a year, you should be fine. So what are the costs of credit? You have to pay principal and interest that's expected over a period of time. If unable to make payments, you're going to get hit with a penalty. But interest and penalties will significantly increase the cost of the initial purchase. And that's like I said, if you finance a TV for $100 and you pay $24 in interest to buy it, you got the TV a year ago and you've been watching it for a year, that's a good thing, but it ended up costing $24 more. Payment history is important. You know, we talked about that, credit scores, all that stuff, cell phones, utilities, rent, all of those things can be reflected in your credit score. So don't be weighed down by interest and finance charges. And this is just kind of an extreme example, but how much time could it take to pay off $1,000 on a credit card? Okay, so if you made the minimum payment, and this is the way the credit companies have it set up, where you virtually have to pay them little or nothing each month, that minimum payment will take a long time. So if you made a minimum payment on $1,000, it could actually take you 25 years to pay it off. I mean, is that absurd or what? So if you paid $2,400 for your purchases with all the finance charges, if you paid $15 you'd end up paying $3,400. So that's an extra $1,000. If you paid the same $1,000 in 116 payments, it would cost you an extra $654, and so on and so on. So the more you add to it, the fewer payments you make and the less interest you have to end up paying. So the one furthest to the right is the cheapest. Obviously, the one furthest to the left, where you take 25 years to pay off $1,000 charge, and in the long run, you end up paying $3,400. So you can see how ridiculous that is. But people do it. You know, they make minimum payments, and it just makes everything more expensive. And again, this is getting back to the credit report. So again, if you have any questions about this, or if you need any of these names, just let us know. We'll get them to you. TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Those are the three major reporting agencies, and you can go to them. You have to put in, if you go to the website that I showed you, you have to put in some personal information. You have to put in things like your date of birth, social security number, but it's safe, and you'll get your credit report. And they ask you out-of-pocket questions, things that nobody else would know, so they make sure you are you. And this is a credit report. I mean, it's a lot of stuff on the screen, and I don't need to go through all that with you, but that's a copy of an actual credit report. And it gives a lot of detailed information on you. All right, bankruptcy, I'm not an expert on. I just want you to be aware that there is a legal process where you can get some relief from debt. And just without getting into the weeds here very much, what it really does is it ruins your credit, because that does get reported to the credit agency. So if you file for bankruptcy, you may get relief from your debt. But if there's anything of value that you own, you kind of have to give that up to pay off whatever can be paid off. And it gets reported in your credit report. And it's there for a long time. And it probably ruins any opportunity that you may have had to get credit in the future. And really this, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, those are just two different types of filings. One where if you have income, you can set up a plan, which is Chapter 13. If you have no means of paying, Chapter 7 is kind of what you would go through. That's about as far as I'll go with it. I would say if that's something you ever wanted to consider, please talk to somebody who is knowledgeable about it and make sure they can tell you all of the ins and outs and the repercussions if you went in that direction. That's all I got.
If people want to get more specific information about everything that you went through here, is that something that they could go to their personal bank and ask for that information or set up an appointment?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's really nothing there that's not public information. And really, if they have questions and they want to come back, Kate or I'd be very happy to touch base with anyone, talk, answer questions, what have you. But yeah, if you go to your personal banker, gee whiz, educators, whatever, I don't have any information here, but there are also credit counseling agencies out there that are available specifically to help people through tough situations.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. As Jill said at the beginning, Maysa and I are the Watertown Social Services Resource Specialists. So we're through the town health department and Wayside Youth and Family Support Network, and provide kind of connection and navigation of resources to all Watertown residents. So we wanted to talk a little bit just briefly about how you can reduce costs and utilize some resources and services. So I always think first about the big costs like rent and utility bills. So we have utility bills. Both Eversource and National Grid actually have a lot of information on their personal websites about ways to help pay your bill. A few of them that I wanted to highlight was that if you have a public benefit like Mass Health or SNAP benefits, etc., then you're automatically eligible for a discount. I think it's different for both of them, but it's like, it can be like, I think it's like 25% off a month. It's a one-page application, and you just send in proof of Mass Health or SNAP, whatever. They also do a budget billing. So, I mean, we know that might be more expensive in the winter for like your heating bill. So you can go on budget billing so that it's the same amount every month, and it might make budgeting easier for you. And then they do have forgiveness programs. So that's if you have an overdue bill, then you can go on a forgiveness or payment plan and pay back monthly in addition to your monthly bill. They calculate the exact amount that you'll pay monthly, and they do, I think one of the companies will forgive a portion of what you owe. Then for food, that's another way to reduce costs, is to utilize some of the resources. So Watertown has 2 food pantries, and then there's also community fridges that are popping up in a lot of different communities. So the closest ones to us are currently in Newton and Cambridge, and you can even just Google community fridge, and they're available 24/7 to anybody. So then we also have some public benefits and services. So SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps. There's some eligibility requirements. If you look up SNAP online, there's like a really easy tool to see if you're eligible based on your income. And they have a very simple preliminary application to fill out just with basic information about yourselves and your family. And then they get in contact with you to go through the rest of the process. HIP is the Healthy Incentives Program. If you have SNAP, you have HIP. It's a little bit complicated to explain the nitty-gritty of it, but it's essentially free produce using your SNAP EBT card at HIP eligible vendors. So the farmers market in Watertown has HIP vendors where you can get fruits and vegetables for free. And then there's also WIC, that's Women, Infants, Children Supplemental Nutrition Program. So for parents with young children, that's another resource to look into. And there's the Watertown WIC office that we have here at the bottom of the screen.
All right, thank you, Sophia. I'm Maysa. So from where Sophia left off with the utility bills, as she mentioned, we do highly encourage our clients to look into budgeting or any discount within their their heating services first. And then if not, and it doesn't meet their budget, we look into fuel assistance, which is a program through the Community Teamwork Agency, and they help with payments towards winter heating bills and discounts on monthly bills, etc. They do, the pay period that they pay for heating is within November 1st to April 31st if you are approved for the program. Heating fuel is anything such as oil, electricity, natural gas, propane, and the list goes on. It doesn't matter if it's within your heating sources within your lease in the rent. They work with anyone to kind of get you the payments. Aside from that, we do usually set up appointments for this in the fall because that's when the program kind of starts again. And with this year, they did extend it due to COVID to the 28th of this month. With that being said, then we have RAFT, which is a rental assistance for families in transition. Depending on your need, the agency can help with anything from helping with first to last month's rent, security deposit if you're looking for a new home or an apartment, or anything from overdue rent. And they also have extended their program related to COVID impact, and they're willing to help people, again, maintain their households with any assistance if you pay rent, you have a mortgage, just obtaining your household overall. And then we have additional resources such as unemployment, which with unemployment, it's a source of income. You do have to be laid off from your job. You cannot be fired unless there are certain circumstances otherwise, but it's usually a layoff. Also with Social Security disability, they have certain requirements. A diagnosed disability is a main factor of it, and it's another source of income for people. And then there is the transitional assistance to families with dependent children, which also has their own requirements. It's families with children under 18, and it deals with strict income. And then lastly, we listed the MBTA Youth Pass, which is a program for youth 18 to 24 to provide an MBTA Youth Pass, and that's directly through me. With all these programs, as I mentioned, they have certain eligibility. We have the applications and the documents needed, so we highly encourage you to reach out to us. I don't know if Sophia wanted to add anything to any of those programs that I might have missed.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. We can go to the next.
Yeah, so lastly, actually, Maysa, you were going to share on this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So with the emergency financial assistance, that is something that we do look into if we run into like any barriers with programs, with the emphasis that it is supposed to be a one-time help. So we do highly encourage looking into other programs first because they are more ongoing. But again, that is something that you can call and we can work that out with you. But we want people to know that it is a one-time thing usually, most of the time. I don't know if there's something else that you would want to say either to this.
Oh, just that I realized that we use SSRS, which is what we call ourselves, the Social Services Resource Specialist. So that means
Yes.
us.
That means us, yes.
Yeah. So, sorry, you go ahead.
To sum things up, we just wanted to give our general information. Our line is available from Monday to Friday. The line itself is run from 9 to 5. We usually try to get back within 48 hours. We are located at Wayside, the multi-service, which is 127 North Beacon Street in Watertown, and we are appointment based. We don't do walk-ins. And then with appointments, it can vary depending on different times that people may need. Our emails are Sophia_Suarez-Friedman at waysideyouth.org, and then mine is Maysa_Ramos at waysideyouth.org. And we highly encourage you to follow us on our Facebook page, which is listed there. There's great updates and about resources within Watertown and in general.
And right now we're working from home and sometimes working from the office too. So we've been working through the whole pandemic. We're available on the phone for phone appointments and then can also make some appointments in person as needed.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And then lastly, I just put like a few resources because the Watertown Free Public Library really has so many great resources right on their website. They have a resource guide specific to COVID that does list some of the resources that Maysa and I talked about tonight. And then I put the Watertown Savings Bank, of course, and then the Watertown Mutual Aid Network is something that I also run. And so that's a way to connect neighbors with other neighbors to provide support. We started it during the pandemic and it's continuing. So maybe you need someone to pick up groceries for you because you can't afford it that month and you can't access other resources, or you are looking for some furniture as you're moving. You know, it's very wide. And if you look up Watertown Mutual Aid Network, it's you'll be able to find it. And I'm also hoping to give these slides to Jill so that she can post it along with the recording of this video, since we do have a lot of links in here. But if you like feel free to look up anything that we talked about, and also feel free to give us a call to ask more questions.
Great.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you, Dick, and
Thank you very
Kate.
much.